Please rise in body or spirit as we sing our gathering hymn number 57, All Beautiful, the March of Days.
Good morning. I am so grateful for your presence this morning. It's so good to see all of you. Somebody was meeting me for the first time this morning. They said, well, what do you like to be called? And so we're Unitarian Universalists. You should have some choices. So some people call me Rick. That's good. That's my name. I'm good with that. Some people call me Reverend Rick. I'm also good with that. And lately, a new title has emerged spontaneously from the congregation that I think actually suits me in some ways too, and it's Ranger Rick. And I love it, and I think we like it. I'm sort of looking after the ecosystem, the forest of our congregational culture, so Reverend Rick or Ranger Rick or Rick, any of those is fine, so I'm happy with that. So I have a question. It's a test. How many of you know what the word mudita means? Last time I asked that question, one person raised their hand. So we're learning this word. Mudita is it's the opposite of schadenfreude. Think of it as the opposite of schadenfreude. Taking pleasure in watching other people be happy and even helping them become happy. That is one of my favorite words because mudita is creating conditions for other people to be happy. And so for our welcome today, I want you to just sort of sit quietly and look around and practice mudita, which is to wish other people well, to think that I hope you have a good day. I hope your life is a good one. I hope you're not suffering. Just take a moment to be looking around and create the spirit of mudita in this place so that we all feel welcome and that we all feel included. It's really important that we think of this way. So take just a moment, look around, and wish others well in your heart. Wish well for them. And when we do that, we create a welcoming environment. So I invite you for being here, for the gift of your presence, and I love your mudita. Let's keep going. Thank you.
I'd like to point out the picture of the welcome slide of the singing bowl and the Unitarian altar cloth from a village near Simenfalva, Romania. They are not only representative of our religious beliefs, but of this congregation. Mary Reese, former music director here and now music director and part of the worship team at East Rose in Gresham, told me that she and her husband at the time, Brian French, gave the bowl and pillow to the church, and that she remembers polishing it many times. In fact, when I sent her this picture, she said, "That doesn't look like it's been polished in 30 years." Which may be true. She also remembers picking up Rick's family at the airport while he drove up from California through snow with the car, carrying at least one cat and possibly a dog, too. Was there a dog, too? Today, we celebrate our congregation and the wonderful connection we have had with a single called minister for 30 years, an achievement not many congregations can say they have done. It has been through love, compassion, and respectful discernment of ideas that we have been able to do this successfully with this Atlanta native. Much like another Atlanta native, who we honor this weekend, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. To quote Reverend King from a 1958 speech, "Disintegration will break down legal barriers and bring men together physically. But something must happen so as to touch the hearts and the souls of men, that they will come together, not because the law says it, but because it is natural and right. In other words, our ultimate goal is integration, which is genuine intergroup and interpersonal living. Only through nonviolence can this goal be attained, for the aftermath of nonviolence is reconciliation and the creation of the beloved community." May we remember Dr. King's vision as well as our own congregation's vision as we say together our affirmation. Love is our doctrine. Compassion is our way. Here we seek to create a joyful home for free religious exploration. Build a community of caring fellowship, nurture the hopes, and serve the needs of our world. So if the storyteller will come and help me light the chalices. Each week we light 3 chalices. The first for our friends and family here at UUCS, Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Salem. The second chalice we light is for our Unitarian Partner Church in Šibenfalva, Transylvania, Romania. And the third we light for children both in lifespan religious education as well as the world at large. We light this chalice to help us move from untruth to truth, to help us move from ignorance to wisdom, to help us move from animosity to love, to help us move from bondage to freedom. We rededicate ourselves before this light to affirm and practice truth, wisdom, love, and freedom today and in the days to come. The Upanishads. Please join me in singing the flame into life.
Good morning. Hello. Hi. Can everybody young or young at heart please join me up front? Good job. Good morning. Hi, guys. Hi, yep, right up here. Yep, right there. Good. Welcome. I would like to hand the mic over to Eric Schumann to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Molly. Hi. And the early bird gets the worm, and that's you, because you came up first. So, Molly's title. You know her title? Director of Lifespan Religious Education. Did I get that right? I did, okay. So, Molly's not always been. No one has ever accused me of not projecting, but there's always a first time. Molly has not always been the Director of Lifespan Religious Education. 30 years ago, when all of your parents were probably something like the age you are now, we had another Director of Lifespan Religious Education. And she is now known as Reverend Millie Rochester. And we have a really special treat today for you because Reverend Millie has come with her husband, Roger, from Vancouver, Washington, just to be with you and with us today. So, Reverend Millie. And you better hold it close to your mouth or you'll get in trouble with Sarah.
I know better than that. So thank you very much, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here today. So I am retired now, but as you know, I was once the Director of Religious Education. It was not Lifespan Religious Education then, for quite some time. And between the time that I was Director of Religious Education and my retirement, I served several churches as their minister. It was a great pleasure, and I was pleased to do that, like Reverend Rick does here. And like Reverend Rick, when I led worship or weddings or other rites of passage, I wore a stole. Like this. This stole was a gift when this congregation ordained me as a minister. And I was recently reminded that come November, it will be 20 years since that happened. I know. That's amazing. 20 years. Putting on my stole, I feel sort of like Clark Kent when he becomes Superman. It's not that my stole has magic power. I mean, I can't leap tall buildings at a single bound, and I can't fly. Darn. But being a minister, which is what our stoles symbolize, does give me the chance to do many things that I think are even better than being able to fly. A minister can help people toward a path of spiritual wholeness, toward a sense of purpose in life, towards honesty and love. We can proclaim the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We can celebrate faithful, loving promises that people make between themselves and families and in churches. We can speak out for justice and peace. We can help to feed the hungry, and we can shelter people who don't have a safe place to live. I think those things are better than being able to fly. Reverend Rick has been doing these things in this congregation for 30 years. And you know what? We can all do some of these things. We can all help other people. And as Reverend Rick said, we can all take great pleasure in helping other people to be happy. So, you don't have to be ordained or wear a stole or even a cape in order to help other people. And together, each and every one of us, when we do that, can change the world. We can make the world a better place. So I hope you'll think about that. Let that carry you through the rest of the day and the rest of your week. And I'm really glad to be here with you today. And Molly?
Thank you. Okay, if everybody can rise up in the middle to create the love arch, we will be on our way.
Why don't you take a deep breath and just enter into this moment of time, this special, blessed moment when we're all together in this room. So much love in this room, so many wonderful people. We'll go out into our regular lives after the service today, and I wonder, what if you resolved to meet with a friend or a colleague or a family member, and your agenda was simply to listen to them deeply, lovingly, fully, so that they could be heard and appreciated, not judged, so that they could say all that was on their heart. Such a rare gift to give someone, the gift of your listening presence and your open heart. What a great gift of compassion it is to listen deeply. May we listen deeply to our own hearts May we listen deeply to those around us. For compassion is our way, and listening, deep listening, is an act of compassion. And gratitude. First comes awareness. Awareness. A beautiful bird, a child's smile, and a hug. A soul-stirring piece of music. Your friendship with someone without whom your life would be so much poorer. The awesome grandeur and majesty of this land of Oregon, this very community. And with awareness naturally comes appreciation. Appreciation of everything, of all the gifts that are strewn our way. And then we find our way to gratitude. Gratitude is the holy path to happiness. And so we walk these paths. We remember it is our practice. Compassion and gratitude. Amen.
This morning, it's all about joy. And we're going to have a lot of opportunity to celebrate and express that joy in the next couple of hours. We have 3 written concerns this morning that I'd like to share with you from the book that is out in the foyer and which you are always welcome to contribute to on Sunday mornings. The first one is from Greg and Margaret Gregg, and they express concern for those sleeping on the streets in the wind and rain. They deserve better from our society. The second concern is from Connie Anderson, thinking about a good friend who is having to move suddenly to take care of her mom, who's had 2 heart attacks this year. And the third concern from Leslie and Bob about our friend Nathan. Please pray for him. And one more candle for both joys and concerns that are unspoken. And do you have one that you wanted to share? Please come forward so people can hear you.
Good morning. I am Mary Sahlstrom's grandson, Andrew, and allow me to share my concern as Mary this week is in hospice. And Mary has only a short time until she will make a final curtain call on what we call this life. All of you, please have your meditations, your prayer, your good vibrations going out for Mary, that she can gracefully, hopefully, in her sleep this week, pass into whatever's next. Because this that she's experiencing right now in a hospital bed is not life. Thank you for your well wishes and prayers.
I'm here with Lifeline's lay ministry. You can identify us, those of us who are members of this committee, by our lavender badges. And you're welcome to share with us any concerns about yourself, about your family, about other members of our community. We're there for you. You can also reach us by email and by calling the church. Thank you.
We gather this Sunday, almost 30 years to the day, when we first stood and made a commitment between ourselves, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation, as we now call ourselves, and the Reverend Richard Reed Davis. We gather today to celebrate this commitment and to rededicate ourselves to the values of this liberal religious tradition of which we are a part. Ever mindful of the great traditions of our heritage and this congregation, as well as mindful of its vast promises, we have looked and continue to look to you, Reverend Davis, to be a representative and unifying voice, reminding us anew of our moral values, our religious concerns, and our spiritual quest. We look to you to challenge us in our thoughts, as well as celebrate with us when we come into our own voice. In turn, we, the congregational members and friends, pledge to walk with you in all the ways of truth, love, compassion, and gratitude. We offer you the cooperation of our hearts and minds, as well as our hands and creativity, as together we take up the work of the resolute good in our congregation, our community, and at the world at large. We gather today because it is indeed a privilege and a pleasure to enter together into the challenges and joys of this ministry in supporting this congregation through the excellence and vision in the free religious heritage we so cherish. We gather today to remember the covenant we made to each other, that we will walk together in the unity of spirit, ever in search of truth through freedom, and ever mindful of the great task of building together a relationship that will enrich us, the community we serve, and the hopes of humanity. Amen.
30 years and 30 minutes, maybe even faster. We'll see. We'll see. Thank you guys for that beautiful song this morning. It really touched my heart. I really appreciate it and everything. So it's the day before New Year's Eve, 1993, back when my hair was dark brown Didn't wear spectacles. I had my front teeth. Getting kind of worn down a little bit, but there I am in Wairika, California, sharing a motel room with Buffy and Sheba, while the rest of the family, my wife Gordana, my one-year-old son Zachary, and my beloved mother-in-law Slavka, who all flew up ahead of me, they were awaiting my arrival in Salem, where I am to begin my second ministry. In my rearview mirror is Emerson Unitarian Church in the San Fernando Valley, Los Angeles, where some kind and wonderful people allowed me to stumble and fumble along for 6 years as their minister, the longest they had ever had one. But my family and I, we wanted to put down roots, and the hectic San Fernando Valley was not going to be the place we wanted to do that. As for Buffy and Sheba, suffice it to say that this was my first and last long-distance trip with 2 cats in the car. They yowled in protest, constantly, unremittingly, without cessation for the entire drive. How I longed to complete my pastoral pilgrimage to Salem, the city of peace. But an unusually severe snowstorm had closed the Siskiyou Pass south of Ashland. Snow and ice blanketed the entire region. It looked like I was going to miss my first Sunday with the Fusonians, as you used to be called, the First Unitarian Society of Salem, Oregon, Fusonians. I'm glad we left that title behind. I was about to call congregational leaders to see if they could set up speakerphones in the meeting room so I could deliver my first sermon by phone. I figured that would be an unusual debut for my ministry, and maybe it would get us some free PR. But the snowplows cleared the pass, and I drove in here to snow and ice-covered Salem, Alaska. That's what it looked like. Things did not thaw out into Salem, Oregon for a couple of weeks or more. Some of you were embarrassed since you had told me, oh, it never snows, rarely snows here in Salem. But that didn't matter to me, and you took this picture of the people sledding down the street in Salem, Oregon, and we framed it, and so I've had that. It's a reminder that you kept your big promises, but you're not supposed to promise the weather, so don't worry about that. Sometime after the ice and snow melted, I was formally installed as your minister. Not a particularly flashy or charismatic model with lots of bells and whistles, but more like a plain but durable model. It may lose a few replaceable parts, but keeps on reliably functioning, more or less, for a good period of time. The installation was held at the First Congregational Church because there were too many of us. Remember that? Some of you. How many of you were at the installation? Any of you? Yeah, a few of you. Yeah, their hands are up. The place was, our old building on 19th and Bremen was simply too small for us. And so we gathered at the First Congregational Church. We had to hit the ground running because, some of you will remember this, a statewide anti-gay organization, the Oregon Citizens Alliance, it was trying to enshrine bigotry into our state constitution. You already had here in the congregation a strong gay-straight alliance that was quite active in opposing this, and I joined in full support. And the first thing we did, I started doing it, preparing for it even before I came here, was to complete the Welcoming Congregation curriculum. It was a very helpful and spiritually balanced program offered by the Unitarian Universalist Association that enabled us to examine the prejudices and biases in our own hearts and minds to ensure that we could more deeply understand how people have changes of heart and mind and how people become more open and accepting. I thought that was a wonderful way for us to start that work, to prepare ourselves, and it was really a great thing, and we're a welcoming congregation and have been ever since then. Indeed, literally speaking, We needed to find a spiritual home that was more open, spacious, accessible to the wider community. It was apparent to all of us, crammed into that building. We had 2 Sunday services. We had no parking lot. You had to climb these steep steps to even get in the building. It was apparent to all of us that we had to have a new home if we were going to realize our promise, to fulfill our promise. And I remember earlier, when we were dreaming and planning for our new home, I was grimly warned at ministerial gatherings of all that could and probably would go wrong with such an ambitious undertaking. But as you know, since we are here right now, this congregation did create this beautiful space. Nothing that I was told was going to go wrong did go wrong, and a lot of big stuff went right. Good fortune smiled upon us, and even as it brought our congregation more fully into being. Generosity really brought this place into being. And I enjoy remembering how wrong some of my colleagues were in their pessimism. And this memory is a good reminder. Don't let other people's lack of vision and hope define your reality. Congregational observers say that the first 2 years of a minister's tenure is a honeymoon period, after which time things get real, and that means dealing with difficult and sometimes uncomfortable situations. Thanks to the building program, everyone's attention was focused on our vision, getting the job done, and my honeymoon got stretched out for another 3 years, 5 years. Not bad. Yet now that the unifying purpose of the building campaign drew to an end, I got word that trouble was brewing. In the estimation of one particular member, I did not measure up to the stature of my 5-foot-tall predecessor, the Reverend Maureen Kaloran, who was indeed a very good minister who strengthened the congregation a lot during her 4 to 5 years of ministry in Salem. And this member shared their unhappiness with their circle of friends, and soon a letter of concern about me and my ministry came to the board. In order to better grasp what's going on, let's zoom out here to look at the bigger picture. Very early in my ministry, my ministerial colleagues elected me to a position known as good offices, and I served as a good officer for four terms, about 16 years. And my role mostly entailed supporting other ministers when they were in crisis, which, alas, was fairly often. I visited at least 17, I think maybe 18. I thought of another one this morning, but I visited at least 17, 18 other congregations from Ashland to Spokane to Seattle, often more than once, all to offer a minister support and seek the best outcomes in difficult situations. Too often, this was like watching a slow-motion train wreck that ended up with a minister being forced to resign, pressured to resign. And sometimes this happened because the minister was clueless about the perceptions they were creating, or they were lacking in interpersonal skills or intellectual or spiritual depth, or they reacted very defensively when criticized, which made things worse. And sometimes I went to these congregations and things fell apart because lay leaders, very ill-suited for their roles, seriously messed things up. And sometimes it was wounded members of the congregations. They were full of anger and outrage about the world in general, and they somehow imagined that deposing their minister who didn't meet their expectations was going to make the world a better place. So I had a number of opportunities to see how ministries can run off track. And I think I got to learn from other ministers' painful experiences, even as it was awfully painful to witness. Every time, the basic problem came down to this: trust had broken. Trust had broken down, or trust was collapsing. And once trust is gone, it's very hard to regain. And when this kind of relationship went off track, there were negative consequences for all concerned. Of course, the minister suffered, but the wound to the congregation over a forced resignation is not something that's forgotten quickly. And I saw how this often set a pattern for a congregation. They would be rough on their ministers and would almost take a certain pride in this, and then wonder why discerning ministers never applied for their pulpits. Too often I witnessed the toxic effects of anger, division, discord. It was as though acid had been thrown onto the fabric of spiritual connectivity that binds a congregation together. And I saw how this dissolved and destroyed relationships, and it left an ugly, gaping congregational wound. So, what about the conflict that was brewing here around my ministry? Well, when unkind and unfair things were said about me in a meeting many years ago, I remember I simply and clearly said, "That's not fair. That's not fair," which was true. I believe that everyone deserves fair treatment, and so I found myself, I'm not used to it, but I stood up for myself. Yet those who had concerns about my ministry, however clumsily and unfairly presented, were not without some merit. And they made me aware of how my own insecurities and lack of confidence was a hindrance to be outgrown. And during this drama, I knew better than to allow hostility to enter the scene, which isn't to say there might not have been some private anger. But even as there was someone leading the charge who I might have called my adversary, they were also a member of this congregation. And I was also their minister. And this was a very principled, intelligent person, wounded, I think, by life, prone to strike out in anger, but also very committed to making positive changes in our world. And I respected them for that. And when an opportunity came to provide some logistical support and advice for a social justice program they were working on, I offered it. I offered the support because I supported and appreciated what they were doing. A few months later, another letter came from the group that had concerns. And in a nutshell, it said, "We have felt heard, and we are satisfied with the outcome." I'm not sure what that was all about, but somehow it worked out. And they are long gone now, yet I still have grateful remembrances of them and the role they played in my life. We both grew fond of one another before cancer took them, and we grew, both of us. I think we grew through the experience. There's a certain testing of the strength of a relationship. You might almost call it a necessary testing, even if it is unpleasant, to see if a relationship can survive a disagreement, a conflict, or maybe not. To see if you can say somewhat level-headed and strive to remain fair. That's always your best bet. Conflict's an unusual thing. In order to have a healthy and a vital congregation, you absolutely have to have conflict, a competition of conflicting ideas and opinions so that we can make the wisest decisions. And that is the kind of conflict I've seen here most often. Healthy conflict, not ego battles, just a common search for the best solutions. Most of the time when I speak from the pulpit, I want you to feel reassured, but I want you to feel a little bit frightened about the potential damage that out-of-control conflict does to the spiritual fabric of community, which is to say that the greatest threats we face often come not from without, but from within. And it's best to offer such warnings when the seas are calm, as they are now, so you can always resolve to be your best self when the seas are stormy. And they will get stormy someday. It always happens. Life is like that. We've weathered all manner of challenges that have come our way, and I have witnessed year after year the most incredible thing. It's really a miracle, except you don't notice miracles if they happen all the time. But here's what I've noticed, is key leaders step up, they step forward again and again into positions of responsibility and do what needs to be done to keep us going. And I think of you members who step into these positions of responsibility here over time. I think of you as these are called glue lamb arches, by the way, these arches. And so I think of you as our glue lamb arch members. You just do what needs to keep us going. You provide the strength and the structure and the wisdom, and you make sure that we have the resources to survive. And I want you to know that it is such members who step up into positions of responsibility, not the minister, who keep the congregation going from year to year. You know who you are, and I'm so grateful for all of you who have stepped up into those positions of responsibility. It's a volunteer thing. You didn't have to do it. And then there are the many dear ones whose love has been wind in my sails. I'm talking about you who greet me and hug me and encourage me and join me in our shared ministry. What a great joy and honor to serve you. How my heart is so full of gratitude for the gift of your presence in my life and in my ministry. How grateful I am for the opportunity to serve you in this way. Over the past 3 decades, we've said tearful goodbyes. I'll get choked up right now just thinking about it. We said tearful goodbyes to so many dear ones now gone. In the Bible, they speak about a great cloud of witnesses, those who kept the faith, those who carried the flame until death took them away from us. And now their light lives in loving memory. More times than I can remember, I've been there in the emergency room, the hospital room, the hospice room, and sometimes at your homes. Death is coming. And we all know it. And there is shock, and there's heartbreak, and there's grief. Yet oftentimes, these are the holiest moments, for the nearness of death brings out our truest and our deepest feelings. The flame of love burns most intensely, most incandescently when final goodbyes are said. Those are holy moments, and I remember so many of them. Family and friends coming together to say goodbye. The tears of grief and gratitude flow freely. And how often have I stood here choking down my own feelings of grief and gratitude? So many times. Choking down my own feelings of grief and gratitude. I put them together, grief and gratitude. They mix when I'm thinking about, why am I crying that this person's gone? Because I'm so grateful for the gift of their life. But I'm also so sad that they're no longer part of our lives here. And when I'm composing these services to celebrate members' lives, I'm struck again and again. This is the richest part of my work. I'm struck again and again by the beautiful way people lived their lives, how they overcame heartbreak and adversity and blessed the world with their lives and blessed the families with their lives and blessed us all in this congregation. I'm talking about remarkable salt of the earth souls who all made us aware of our own better selves by virtue of the way they lived and loved and moved amongst us. We come here to hear the stories of those who have passed on, and we come here to hear and listen to the stories of spiritual forebears, from many traditions who remind us of our highest and holiest callings. We come here to listen to the stories of our free faith tradition, that we might be aware of the transgenerational religious trajectory of our free faith and the courage and the commitment it often took to keep the flame alive. We need to hear these stories of persecuted forebears in dungeon cells so that we might not lose the courage to bear witness to the truth in our own times. Our open-hearted, open-minded, free faith tradition is a precious heritage, and whether we recognize it or not, it is the foundation upon which this congregation exists. And that is why that I and a growing number of others have recognized our call to be defenders of our free faith and challenge the authoritarian, undemocratic powers being exercised right now by the leadership of our own association. I'll tell you more about that in a sermon in a couple of weeks, but we defend our free faith tradition for whoever would take it away. You've listened to so many of my sermons. Amazingly, you have stayed awake through most of them. The underlying motivation for all my sermons is to share the good news that brings hope and healing. I speak of the good news about our lives, our loves, our holiest hopes and aspirations. Good news about our resiliency in the face of adversity. Good news about serving the greater good. Good news about Beethoven and other great artists. Good news about the sublime heights and the sacred mysteries that transcend our mortal imaginations. Good news about the beauty and wonder of life. Good news about the sacred heart at the heart of reality. That's why I speak, to share good news. It's a common theme in modern literature for clergy characters at my late stage of the game to have long since lost their faith and they're just going through the motions because they don't know what else to do and they need the paycheck. Such depictions often really serve to show the world how shallow is the modern author's understanding of true faith. For I have met many good clergy over the years from many traditions whose faith was very genuine and authentic and only grew stronger and deeper over the years. Such is my faith. Every week we affirm our faith, which grows stronger as we conclude our services by affirming our faith in the Spirit of life. Our faith in the Spirit of life. Trust in the river's flow. Trust in the river's flow. Trust that it flows toward a greater love, a greater joy. Trust that Hildegard of Bingen spoke well and true when she said, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." Amen. Would you please join me in a period of meditation, prayer, reflection, as we celebrate our journey together today. Let us be mindful that our journey always includes other people. May we be mindful of the friendships and the love and the joy that we share. May we be mindful of the pain and the sorrow in our world, that we might do what we can with our shared ministries to bring more hope and healing and love. As we continue our journey along, let us not lose heart. Let us not lose faith. This is a beautiful life, We make it more beautiful by sharing it together. May it be so. Amen.
We now transition to a small intermission of our proceedings to look at how we as a community help the rest of both our church, excuse me, or this congregation, as well as the community at large. And we do that through our time, our pledges, and our donations. This month, the recipient for Share the Plate is Family Promise, something that has been going on for 25 years, and we as a congregation was one of the founding congregations here in Salem to start that. This week, for the first time in 3 years, we're going to have families back in the building, which will be wonderful. And thank you all who volunteered your time and your energy to make that happen. As always, if you have items for the Marion Polk Food Share, you may place them in the little red wagon. You may donate online, or if you are here in person, their offertory bags will be being passed through, and you may place your donations in there. And thank you all for everything that you do to make this world a better place.
That's what I said, I am, you are me. Don't you see, I am, you are me. That's what I said, I am, you are me. Don't you see, I'm over here, or you're over there. That's what I said, something between you or is greater than air. Don't you see, I'm over here. That's what I said, something between you are greater than air. Don't you see? See through the confusion, it's not hard to do. That's what I said, it's just an illusion. It's me and you. Don't you see? See through the confusion, it's not hard to do. That's what I said, it's just an illusion. It's me and you. Don't you see? See through the confusion, it's not hard to do. That's what I said, it's just an illusion. It's me and you. Don't you see? See through the confusion, it's not hard to do. That's what I said, it's just an illusion. It's me and you. Don't you see? I am a part of you. You are a part of me, and so together we are one body. I am inside your head, you are inside my heart. We come together, perfect from the start. I am, you are me. That's what I said, I am, you are me. Don't you see? Seems like I'm over here, or you're over there. That's what I said, something between you and me. Don't you see? See through the confusion, it's not hard to do. That's what I said, it's just an illusion. It's me and you. Don't you see? See through the confusion, it's not hard to do. It's just an illusion. It's me and you. Don't you see? See through the confusion, it's not hard
I was looking up there, and I think, is Sarah preaching today? No, it's next. We switched out. I was going to be in the pulpit next Sunday, but Sarah Pickett has one of our part of our harmless storytellers ministry is going to be in the pulpit, and I'll be in the pulpit the following Sunday. So we're just switching that around. Just want you to be aware that of that little change, but it shouldn't affect your life at all. You're going to be here anyway at both services. Something's going on here, and am I supposed to sit down?
Is he supposed to sit down, Eric?
Have a seat, my friend. You're done here for the moment. I was just itching to come back up here to the pulpit and introduce you to a couple of my very good, very old friends. In 1992, Diane Rumbach, Roger Rochester, and I spent close to a year helping this congregation find its new minister. And Roger, thank you for coming down from Vancouver today, along with Reverend Millie. Let's think about that search that we did for a minute. Now, who would want to be a minister of a place called Fuso? Well, that was us in 1992 when we occupied that quirky little building on 19th Street. How many of you remember it? Oh yeah, quite a few. Our search committee had considered several other candidates, but the last guy we interviewed really stood out from the rest. How? Well, he was taller. He had the longest fingers of any of the candidates, and he had a slight Georgia drawl. Seriously, though, I didn't know what to make of this Reverend Davis from Simi Valley, California, until we talked about two things in that search committee. 30 years ago, there was hardly any internet, and congregations who were looking for clergy exchanged these big 3-ring binders with ministers who were looking for a settlement. The church binder included sections on our history, our budget, our committees, the staff, and what we thought about our future. The minister's binder told us about his education, his settlements, well, you'd only had one, his education, his style, his theology, and his goals. Well, at one point during the interview, we asked him, hey, Reverend Rick, you know we're thinking about moving to a new building. We've had 2 false starts. They were pretty, they fell on their face. And wondered, do you have any ideas about how we could conduct a successful building and fundraising campaign? I'm glad you asked that, he said, and proceeded to open up his briefcase, pull out a thick file, and ran to the blackboard and continued to lecture us for the next 15 minutes uninterrupted about how to conduct a successful building campaign. We sat there with two emotions. We were spellbound and darned excited. That's when I had the clue that this guy was the right one. Later, another committee member asked him, hey, Reverend Rick, if you were called as our minister, how long do you see yourself serving this congregation? And he replied, well, I have a son who's not yet 2. I would want him to see him graduate from high school, go on to college, and I could foresee myself spending the rest of my ministry right here in Salem. Oh, right, I thought to myself. This guy is either clueless about ministerial tenure, which the average settlement is about 7 years, or he's just blowing smoke. My friends, I've never been so glad to be wrong about anything in my life. No, not yet. Diane?
Well, there's a few people here who would be curious of why I'm talking about anything I remember, since I didn't even remember I agreed to do this today. But I have to say that it was great being on the search committee, but I don't remember anything about any of the other sermons that were preached during the process. But what I remember is Samuel May. And I think probably you've all heard the story, and I'm not going to tell it. I'm going to let Rick tell it again if you don't know it. But it just brought home to me that was what I wanted to see. Yes, I wanted somebody who was passionate about a lot of things, social justice, but I also wanted somebody who would appreciate that someone could debate somebody about what they thought was right, and then at the end of the time, say, I'm sorry about your child that's sick. And that encapsulates it for me.
Well, part of the search process involved a pre-candidating sermon. And this has to be at a neutral pulpit, someplace other than in the congregation the person is being called to, or hopefully being called to. So after we'd had these meetings, as Eric was talking about, then we had gone to that. And let me fill you in on this a little bit of the setting on this. So here we are in another church, using their space and their equipment, following the liturgy that was familiar to them, not to us. As it happened, that church had arranged for an outside musician on that Sunday. In my memory, this is a young person just trying to get themselves established in the trade, willing to take any gig they could get. And I don't remember how this person did accompanying hymns, for example. I don't remember that. But he did bring a song, not Beethoven. James Taylor. You might even know this song. The secret of life is enjoying the passage of time. Any fool can do it. There ain't nothing to it. Well, as it happens, that was and still is one of my favorite songs. But for some reason, I had never considered it as a response to a spiritual quest. So I was sitting there just gobsmacked at having discovered an empty closet in my mind. And then Rick stood up to give his sermon and introduced us to Samuel J. May. And once again, my mind was opened. So I think it is just fitting and proper that we would be here today honoring Rick's ministry in the passage of time.
We'd like to share a few images from the past 30 years with you, and that's what's going to happen next.
And now if we could have the lights back up for a second. We're going to go ahead, and Rick, we have a couple of things to present to you. Okay. So the first thing is Leslie Zygon is going to bring it up and tell you all about it. Here, Leslie, why don't we?
I don't think I need a mic. Do I need a mic? Fifth grade, usually you didn't need one. Bob and I came here 2 years ago for our next door neighbor's funeral. First time. At Mike Swain, former mayor. And we looked at each other and we said, this church works for us. We both have very different backgrounds. And so we've been coming since then. Makes a difference in our life. So anyway, I was asked to do something for you, which I was very glad to do. Ranger Rick. So if you'll come here. To unwrap this.
Ranger Rick, 30.
I'll have to help you with it. Okay. I was asked to make a stole for Rick. It's 80 inches long. It's totally reversible. And this side is just the blue side. It says love and presence, which is what he is. But on the other side are all these sayings that someone here told me, and they're all embroidered on the other side, which is double-faced. So we'll put this on you. So when you go up to talk to him, you have something to talk about. He makes a difference. He makes a difference for Bob and me, but I'm sure for all of you, a man who makes a difference. What can you say more than that? This is a dream catcher. Do you know what that is?
I do, but I need to catch some dreams.
You do, because you give dreams to other people, or nightmares.
Let me look at it. This is, oh yeah.
You hang this up, and we'll just...
I'll catch my dreams. We'll catch everybody's dreams. We'll hang it in the office.
Okay. There's one more thing. You might as well just stay here. Let me take this. I'll take this for you from you. You might as well just stay right here and come on up. The Gregs have made something for you.
Yeah, we were offered the opportunity to do a little ceramic sculpture in commemoration of Rick's 30th anniversary with UU. And we thought we would include the congregation. Of course, we had to make the theme spirituality and maybe a little Reverend humor. A little humor for Reverend Rick. And so this is sort of a depiction of Reverend Rick and the congregation. Each of one of you is depicted in this. Maybe you and Reverend Rick can figure out which member of the flock you are. This is Reverend Rick, or Ranger Rick and his flock.
I'm overwhelmed, and I just can't. I've said everything I pretty much can say. I'm just so grateful from the bottom of my heart for this community and all the people in my lives and all the wonderful outpouring of support. It's really my day to say thank you, this congregation, for the wonderful people in it. So I love you all, and that's why I do ministry. And it's a beautiful life I have. Thank you.
Okay, after that, we won't make him do the news of the community. But suffice to say, there's a lot going on. Be sure, and after this service, go and do the fellowship hall. There's a nice little luncheon and some cake afterwards. So please go do that. And now, bring your Rick. One more thing, please. Rick takes the light from our chalice, lighting the social justice and service candle, representative of all the good works you do in your daily life as you encounter other people. And as we extinguish the chalices, these words from Barbara Hamilton Holloway. Now go in peace. Deeply regard each other. Truly listen to each other. Speak what each must speak. Be ready in every moment to disarm your own heart. Rejoice in this love you have begun. Amen.
Please rise in body and spirit as we sing our hymn number 118, This Little Light of Mine.
Please join me while we say our closing words. May faith in the spirit of life, hope for the community of earth, and love for the sacred in one another be ours now and in all the days to come. Bless you.